All right, let's dive into what many people call the absolute peak of classical music, Johann Sebastian Bach's Mass in B minor. Now, it's this incredibly beautiful, incredibly complex piece of work, but we're going to look at it a little differently today. Because this isn't just a piece of music you listen to. No, it's more like a puzzle you solve. It's just filled with these hidden layers and ingenious secrets that Bach literally wrote into the notes themselves. So the big question is, what is he trying to tell us? You see, for a guy like Bach, music was this incredibly deep language. And in the Mass in B minor, he used that language to build something that operates on so many levels at once. You've got this gorgeous surface, right? But just underneath, there's a whole world of clever tricks and secret structures hiding. So our mission today is to crack that code. We're going to dig into this amazing piece of music and uncover some of the secrets that make it so profound. First off, we've got to understand what this piece actually is. Bach worked on it during the last couple decades of his life. And get this, it wasn't for some big royal wedding or a church service. Nope. This was his legacy, his ultimate musical statement. It was basically a grand summary of his entire life as an artist. So let's peel back the first layer of this mystery. And what we find right away might actually surprise you. A huge part of this masterpiece was built from, well, recycled materials. That's right, a massive chunk of the Mass is actually adapted from stuff Bach had already written, mostly his church cantatas. But hold on, this wasn't him being lazy or running out of ideas. It was a totally common, totally respected artistic move back then. The key word here is parody. Now, when we hear that word, we think of a funny imitation, right? But in Bach's day, it meant something completely different. It meant taking a piece you'd already written and giving it a new life, carefully reworking every little detail to fit a new text and a new context. Think of it like artistic reinvention. And here is a brilliant example of how it works. The absolutely heart-wrenching music for the crucifixus, the part about the crucifixion, that music originally came from a cantata chorus about deep worldly suffering. I mean, the German text is just dripping with grief. Weeping, lamenting, worrying, all of it. So this is the magic trick. Bach takes that existing feeling, that raw emotion of intense sorrow, and he masterfully applies it to the most tragic central moment of the Christian faith. The mood, the affect, as they'd say, was already perfect. He just had to reforge it for its ultimate purpose. And the experts totally back this up. It wasn't just a simple copy and paste job. Musicologist Karl Geringer said the adaptations enriched the originals. Bach almost always refined and improved his first ideas, making the new version even more powerful than the thing it came from. And get this is the wildest part. Scholars argue that this whole process, carefully adapting an old piece to a new text, making sure every single note and every syllable fits just right, it was often more difficult and took Bach longer than just starting from scratch. So this was all about perfection, not about taking a shortcut. Okay, but Bach wasn't just recycling his own music. He was pulling from the entire history of music to build what you can only really describe as a cathedral of sound. Seriously, think of him as a musical time traveler. In this one piece, you can hear echoes of ancient Gregorian chant right next to the super complex vocal webs of Renaissance masters. Then suddenly, you get the high drama of an Italian opera aria, and even the light, trendy, courtly dances that were popular in his own day. He just grabbed it all and synthesized it into this one universal work that still speaks to us across the centuries. And he didn't just throw these styles together. No way. He arranged everything with the precision of a master architect. The big sections of the Mass, like the Credo, they're not just a random string of songs. They are built like massive, perfect symmetrical arches, with movements on one side carefully balancing the movements on the other. So what do you think is at the exact center of that grand architectural arch in the Credo? You guessed it, the crucifixus, that recycled piece of music we were just talking about. It's not just the emotional heart of the section. Bach literally made it the structural keystone, the central pillar holding the whole design together. It's just incredible. Okay, now for the really fun part. Beyond all the big structures, Bach buried a hidden language right into the notes themselves. A whole layer of symbolism that just adds this wild new dimension to the music. So here's this brilliant little bit of musical wordplay. The German word for a sharp sign, that little hashtag symbol in music, is Kreuz. But the word Kreuz also means cross. So Bach uses this pun all the time. He writes these musical phrases that visually trace the shape of a cross on the page to symbolize the crucifixion. It's a hidden picture right there in the score. And this brings us to one of the most hotly debated topics in all of Bach's scholarship. Did he also use numbers to hide meaning in his music? You know, like the number of notes in a phrase or the number of bars in a section. Was it all part of a secret code? Well, the jury's still out. On one side, you have people who say, of course he did. Using numbers symbolically was a really common practice back then, and Bach was a master of every kind of symbolism. But on the other side, you've got skeptics and statisticians who point out, hey, if you look hard enough for patterns in something this complex, you're going to find them, whether the composer meant to put them there or not. Here's a perfect example of what they're arguing about. In the Sanctus, the choir sings Holy, Holy, Holy. Bach writes this part for 6 voices, which you can think of as 2 groups of 3. So is that just a random musical choice? Or is it a deliberate way to musically represent the Holy Trinity, which is being invoked 3 times? It's fascinating to think about, right? So after unlocking a few of these secrets, how does this change the way we actually listen to the piece? Well, it gives us a whole new mission when we press play. Next time you put this on, try this little guide. First, listen for those borrowed tunes, especially in the crucifixes. Can you hear that old sorrow? Second, try to spot the different styles as they pop up. When does it sound ancient? When does it sound like a dance? And third, just try to feel the sheer scale of it, that massive, balanced architecture. It completely transforms how you hear it. And that's really the main takeaway here. Understanding how Bach built this thing, the recycling, the architecture, the symbolism, it doesn't ruin the magic. If anything, it just deepens our appreciation for his genius. You're not just hearing pretty sounds anymore, you're basically exploring the composer's mind. You're a detective. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If Bach's music was this incredibly rich puzzle box, just packed with codes and hidden meanings from his world, what secret structures and clever games are today's artists embedding in the music we listen to right now? What are we all missing?